The stars vanished in an instant. What had been a calm, glimmering night over Earth became a canvas of darkness as 237 alien warships bled out a slipstream. Their angular hulls stretched like jagged obsidian across the upper atmosphere, blotting constellations one by one. They moved with the precision of predators, circling a kill, silent, coordinated, and mercilessly aligned. On the observation deck of Athena's Veil, Earth's largest orbital hub, Commander Elias Kale stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The reflection of the alien armada painted faint silver lines across the glass before him. He neither flinched nor spoke. The alarms had gone off 5 minutes ago. The chatter control officers now filled the deck like a restless tide. "They're not even cloaking their numbers," said Mira Tanaka, his aide, stepping up beside him. Her voice carried restrained urgency. "That's a declaration without the formality." Elias let the silence linger a moment before answering. "They want us to see the teeth before the bite." He turned slightly, dark eyes cut into the low glow of holographic displays. "Any signs of weapons charging?" "None yet," she replied. "But their lead vessel is broadcasting a wideband hail, encoded but crude. They're expecting us to respond." "Patch it through." A column of violet light flared at the center of the deck, materializing into a towering, insectoid figure clad in ornate black armor. Mandibles framed its jaw like serrated blades. Its carapace shimmered with subtle oil-slick sheen. High Imperator Vadran Korzal, the apex predator of the Dravari Dominion, fixed his unblinking gaze on the humans before him. "Earth," his voice reverberated through layered translators, low and resonant like grinding stone. "You occupy what should belong to the Dominion. Rich minerals, strategic lanes, a weak, scattered fleet. You will yield or you will burn. No greetings, no negotiations, only a demand." Mira inhaled sharply. Elias did not. "High Imperator," he said, his tone even, almost cordial. "You have arrived uninvited, yet Earth welcomes dialogue. No hostile formations have been ordered. We remain neutral in your passage." Vadran's mandibles clicked once, a sound that might have been amusement or the prelude to hunger. "Neutrality is the coward's veil. We require submission, not conversation. Prepare your world for integration." Elias studied the projection for a heartbeat longer. He could see the reflection of fear in the officers around him, slight, human things, the tightening of shoulders, the stiffness of spines, the swallowed breaths. "We'll continue this through proper channels," Elias replied. "For now, your fleet will maintain orbit beyond 30,000 kilometers. Any deviation will be treated as provocation." Vadran leaned forward slightly, his chitin plates rasping. "You believe a line of orbit will stay my hand? You have no fleet worthy of the term. Your defense satellites are relics. We see no warships mobilizing." "Why?" Elias allowed himself the faintest trace of a smile, barely a curve, almost a shadow of one. "Because we don't need to." The projection flickered out. A hushed pause fell over the deck. Mira exhaled sharply. "You're baiting him." "I'm giving him the illusion of choice," Elias corrected. He stepped away from the viewport, motioning for her to follow. "Alert the council. Tell them we begin formal talks in 3 hours." "They won't wait 3 hours." "They will," he said, adjusting the cuff of his dark uniform. "Because they don't yet understand what happens if they don't." The conference chamber was a stark dome of steel and muted blue light. Members of the Unified Defense Council filled the oval table, their faces marked by sleepless lines and restrained agitation. News feeds had already begun to pulse across Earth, fragments of footage leaking from civilian telescopes and amateur skywatchers. "They're deploying scouts around Luna," said Admiral Reeve, his weathered fingers drumming against the table. "Shall we move the dauntless battle group into position, at least to show them we're not asleep?" "That's precisely what they want," Elias replied, standing at the head of the chamber. "A show of strength leads to a test of strength. We cannot win that engagement, at least not in the way they expect." Minister Osei narrowed her eyes. "You're advocating an action?" "I'm advocating the kind of action they cannot measure with their sensors," Elias said. "The Dravari thrive on intimidation. They expect us to mirror their aggression, and when we don't, They hesitate. Uncertainty is our strongest weapon. Several counselors exchange glances. The memory of past conflicts, costly, public, devastating, hung in the air like a stale smoke. Earth had learned, painfully, that war was not always won with fleets. Later, in the dim corridor leading to the station's restricted wing, Mira caught up with Elias again. "You're calm to a fault," she said quietly. 200 warships in orbit, and you act like it's a minor trade dispute." He stopped, turning just enough that the shadow of a passing drone cut across his face. Calm keeps the enemy guessing. Panic gives him certainty. Her gaze softened just slightly. "You still carry it, don't you? That old mission." Elias didn't answer immediately. Images flickered in the corners of his memory. Wreckage adrift, names on a classified report, orders that came too late and too loud. It had been years, but the lesson endured. Never let them see the full shape of your hand until their blade is already in the sheath. "Every mistake leaves a scar," he said finally. "We build strategies out of them." From the viewport, Earth looked serene. Cloud bands curling over its oceans, city lights glittering faintly across its surface. To the Dravari, it must have looked like a prize waiting to be claimed. But beneath its calm blue veil, relays whispered, silent grids pulsed, and dormant sentinels turned their sensors inward, not outward. Waiting, a junior officer approached. "Commander, encrypted channels report ready." "Good." Elias stepped back into command deck, voice steady as ever. "Begin transmission. Minimal burst. They only need to know we're listening." "What if they intercept?" "They won't understand it." He looked once more at the void where the alien fleet hung, so vast it turned the sky into a wound. "Let them believe they've cornered us," he murmured. "That belief will be the first thread they pull." And alas, the Dravari fleet moved like a living wall, its formations adjusting in deliberate silence. From the shadow of Luna, a cluster of their smaller frigates detached, sliding into low orbit around the moon's far side. They did not fire, but their intent was unmistakable. Control the high ground, choke the lanes, signal dominance. On the command deck of Athena's Veil, a low ripple of unease passed among the officers as the positions updated on the tactical grid. Mira Tanaka leaned forward, palms on the edge of the console. "They're spreading, probing our routes," she said. "At this rate, they'll dictate every corridor between Earth and Mars." Elias Kale studied the moving lines without comment. His face reflected cold starlight from the panoramic glass. Let them think they're closing the net. The tighter it feels, the more reckless their next step. Mira shot him a sharp look. "You're gambling on restraint from a species built on conquest." "I'm not gambling," Elias replied, voice quiet but firm. "I'm counting on arrogance. That's a far more predictable currency." Hours later, the Unified Defense Council reconvened via secure hololink. Their images shimmered in a ring around Elias' station, some clear, others grainy from deep space relays. Admiral Reeve was first to speak, his uniform as creased as his forehead. "Reports confirmed Dravari scouts have bypassed our perimeter buoys. They're jamming the Lagrange point relays. If we don't mobilize, we'll be blind in 48 hours. And if we do mobilize," Elias asked, "they'll see it as preparation for resistance." Minister Osei interjected, her tone edged. "Perhaps that's exactly what we need. A show of force, even token, proves we won't bow." Elias looked from one projection to another, weighing the pulse of their arguments against the silence beyond the glass. "A token show of force invites a real one. They want us to posture. They want the first shot to look like ours." A younger counselor, newly appointed, restless, leaned in. "Then what? We wait while they cut off our stations and strip the belt." "We wait," Elias said, "while they grow impatient. Predators starved of the chase make mistakes." The ring of figures wavered, some nodding reluctantly, others muttering. There would be no consensus tonight, only containment. They ended the session with more questions than they began. In the narrow corridor outside, Mira caught his pace. "You're running out of patience credits, Elias. The Council's tolerance won't stretch forever." He allowed a faint sigh. "They're reacting to optics. I'm reacting to outcomes." "And what about the people?" she pressed. Civilians are already panicking. Social channels are flooded with escape plans. Everyone's waiting for a fleet that isn't launching. He stopped before the armored viewport, where Earth's shadow rolled slowly beneath the station. If they knew what sits beneath their cities, they'd sleep soundly. But they can't know, not yet. Mira lowered her voice. You're still set on keeping the grid dark? Yes. Even a partial reveal. No, he said, sharper than intended. Then softer. Not until we force their hand. If we show it now, we teach them how to counter it. She nodded, though unease lingered in her eyes. Beyond the moon, the first spark of resistance flared, not from Earth's fleet, but from the planet itself. A Dravari corvette, one of the scouts patrolling the far side orbit, drifted closer to the magnetic relay at Tranquility Node. Its instruments spiked with false readings, phantom heat blooms, fake comm signals, until the crew moved in to investigate. 30 seconds later, its transmissions cut mid-burst. Sensors recorded a brief distortion, then nothing. No debris, no flare. The ship was simply absent. On Athena's veil, the report arrived in clipped, coded bursts. They'll blame sabotage, Mira murmured, scanning the data. Or a hidden mine. They'll blame everything except the truth, Elias said. His fingers tapped the table once, twice. Perfect. The Dravari reacted as predators do when prey slips the snare. They tightened their circle. From his flagship, High Imperator Vadran Corzo issued a sector-wide command. No vessel was to approach Earth's surface without escort, and long-range scanners intensified across the magnetosphere. His second-in-command, a lean warrior named Drexel, voiced what others whispered. They hide something, Imperator. No world so unguarded dares such silence. Vadran's mandibles flexed. Then we draw out. No prey carries fangs it refuses to show without reason. Back aboard the orbital hub, the human public had begun to fray. News feeds spoke in restrained tones of negotiations, but footage leaked to Dravari ships blotting out the stars. Underground forums speculated on evacuation, on surrender, on sabotage from within. Elias walked to the habitation ring that evening, unannounced, unescorted. The people glanced at him but said little. His face was known to many, his reputation to more. He stopped by a small viewport, where a family watched the streaks of alien light carve across the horizon. They look ready to crush us, the father muttered, not seeing Elias behind him. Sometimes a larger shadow hides a smaller trap, Elias said. The man turned, startled. Recognition flickered. Says it true? We have nothing to fight them with. Elias met his gaze evenly. It's true we don't fight as they expect. That's why they haven't struck yet. The answer seemed to settle over the small group, not comfort, but a pause in the growing panic. That night, Elias drafted a message, not to the council, not to public, but to an address buried in encrypted directories beneath the station's core. Condition Delta approaching. Hold position. Await trigger. No signature. No seal. Just a line of code that would ripple beneath the skin of Earth's defense web like a whisper. At dawn, a new transmission pulsed from the Dravari flagship. Its tone was less overtly hostile, but no less sharp. Earth representative. Your refusal to comply is noted. Our patience is limited. The Dominion will not orbit idly while you plot. Elias responded with the same calm as before. Then we should not waste your time with threats. High Imperator, send your terms and we'll review them. There was a pause. Static stretched just a second too long, before Vadran's voice returned, dripping with restrained disdain. Terms are not for prey to review. The channel cut. Mira looked at Elias. He's close to striking. Closer to showing his hand. Elias corrected. And when he does, he'll find it already empty. Beneath the calm corridors of Athena's veil, the shadows of power began to stir. Systems dormant for decades hummed a little louder. Old satellites shifted by fractions of degrees. And deep beneath Earth's crust, something listened, waiting for a command it hoped would never come. The hunters believed they held the world in their jaws. They had not yet realized whose throat they leaned across. The blockade tightened. From Mars' transfer lanes to the Jovian outposts, the Dravari Dominion had cast its net wide. Merchant ships were halted, their cargoes scanned without consent. Civilian haulers were turned back with curt, untranslated warnings. Each intercepted vessel sent ripples of unease through Earth's fragile trade arteries. On the observation ring of Athena's Veil, Elias Kale reviewed the latest map, a spiderweb of interdicted routes, each marked with a cold red glyph. Mira Tanaka joined him, eyes scanning the growing lattice of alien control. "They're no longer probing," she said. "They're constricting. They want panic," Elias replied, his voice measured. "Panic invites surrender. And if panic turns to anger, people are demanding action. Even the council is fracturing." Elias finally looked at her. "Let them fracture. Unity built on fear is a brittle thing." The council session that followed was more heated than the last. Holographic avatars filled the chamber, their projections flickering with static from strained communications. "They've seized 6 freighters in the past 12 hours. Admiral rebarked. Crew detained. Cargo stripped. This is no longer intimidation. It's piracy." Minister Ose leaned forward, fingers steepled. "They want us to lash out, to make the first strike, so their war looks righteous." Reeves' jaw set. "And if we do nothing, we invite humiliation." Elias raised a hand, drawing their voices down. "There's a difference between doing nothing and being unseen. Every step they take now is a calculation. Every misstep is a debt." The younger counselor, still restless, spoke sharply. "A debt we haven't collected." Elias did not flinch. "Not yet." Beyond the walls of negotiation, the public pressure mounted. Networks buzzed with grainy footage of Dravari patrols skimming low over mining stations. Anonymous clips claimed to show crewmen dragged away in restraints of polished chitin. Some were real, some manufactured, but the effect was the same. Unease shifting toward fury. Mira watched one such broadcast in the command lounge. A commentator shouted over static-filled images, his voice hoarse with rage. "Where are our ships? Where is our defense? Are we to kneel before scavengers?" She muted the feed and turned to Elias. "This isn't holding, Elias. People need proof we're not paralyzed." He folded his arms, gazed still on the drifting icons of the Dravari fleet. "Proof comes at the right moment, not the loudest one." That moment sharpened sooner than expected. Near the outer belt, a convoy of our carriers attempted passage under false transponder codes. The Dravari flagged them within minutes. 3 escorts detached to intercept. Communications went dark. Hours later, only 2 escorts returned. The missing vessel left behind no wreckage, no distress call. Only a faint spike of electromagnetic distortion recorded by Earth's deep space buoys. Vadran Korzal received the report aboard his flagship. His mandibles clicked in slow rhythm as his staff analyzed the readings. Drexel, his second, shifted uneasily. That's the second disappearance, Imperator. Same pattern, same silence. Vadran's compound eyes narrowed. They lacked a fleet for open war. Yet our scouts vanish. There is a hand behind the curtain. "Perhaps a minefield," Drexel offered. "Or cloak platforms." "No." Vadran's voice carried the rasp of conviction. "This is deliberate. They choose which threads to cut." At Athena's Veil, Mira placed a dossier on the command table. A list of intercepted messages, panic requests, unconfirmed sightings. "Every hour we wait, the narrative turns," she said. "They see vanishing ships as weakness, not warning." Elias studied the dossier in silence. His fingers hovered over the encrypted communicator at his side. "You're thinking of triggering it," Mira said softly. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because their commander still believes he controls the tempo," Elias replied. "The longer he holds that belief, the deeper his fleet steps into our reach." The first true provocation came on the 4th day. A Dravari destroyer, flanked by 2 smaller escorts, drifted into low Earth orbit without authorization. It locked the targeting array. Not fired, only locked. Onto the solar relay at Casablanca, our civilian networks froze under the signal's interference. For 30 minutes, a third of Earth's daylight communications went silent. The council erupted. Voices clashed over emergency channels. Demands for immediate response drowned beneath their own echo. Some called for activating the orbital defense lines. Others whispered of unconditional talks. Elias listened, unmoved. "Let them finish," he said quietly. When the channel fell silent, he spoke. "High Imperator Vadran has just crossed a line he was warned against. His arrogance has weight now. Record this moment. When we answer, it will not be with warnings." That night, Mira found him alone in the darkened strategy room, a single hologram flickering before him. Earth, its orbital pattern dotted with faint markers known only to a few. "You keep staring at the map," she said. "I'm listening," Elias murmured. "To what?" "To the grid. It hums louder every time they move." She hesitated. "And when it roars?" Then they learned what silence was hiding. The Dravari fleet showed no sign of retreat. More ships slid into the shadowed side of the planet, their sensor rays drinking in the surface below. Propaganda broadcast and clipped, alien phrases flooded civilian bands, promising integration and protection under Dominion order. Vadran addresses commanders privately. The prey bears no claws. Their leaders hide behind words. We will end their illusion soon. He did not know the illusion was not Earth's weakness, but his own certainty. As dawn cut the rim of the world, Elias issued his first direct maneuver. Not an attack, not a broadcast, only a signal, buried in the pulse of a civilian weather update, carried on frequencies a Dravari would ignore. 3 dormant satellites adjusted their orbits by a fraction of a degree. Mira watched the readout, her expression unreadable. "That's it. That's the thread," Elias said. "Once it's tugged, the fabric moves." On the surface, life continued beneath the quiet siege. Markets opened, trains crossed continents, children played under skies filled with unfamiliar shadows. The world held its breath, caught between the visible threat above and the unseen promise beneath. Patience, Elias thought, was not passive. It was pressure held in reserve. The Dravari had yet to understand that. The first strike came without fanfare. At 3:14 Universal Time Coordinated, a pulse of searing light cut through the dark side of orbit as a Dravari destroyer fired on the Casablanca relay. The beam was surgical, precise, a deliberate warning rather than a massacre. Panels fractured, comm grid stuttered, and for 9 seconds a third of Earth's network systems went blind. On the command deck of Athena's Veil, alarms cascaded across every panel. Mira Tanaka's fingers moved swiftly, routing emergency signals and rerouting priority channels. "They've crossed it," she said, her voice flat. No more posturing. That was an act. Commander Elias Kale stepped into the glow of the displays. He looked neither surprised nor alarmed. "Transmit to the Council. Contingency Delta moves to Stage 2. Mira hesitated. "That means activating." "Yes," he said, eyes on the shifting icon of the destroyer. No more warnings. Minutes later, the High Imperator's projection flared into the center of the deck, taller than a man, framed by jagged violet light. His mandibles clacked in restrained triumph. "Your silence has ended. Human, now you understand our resolve." Elias regarded him as one might study a restless animal. "You struck a civilian relay. You confirmed what the galaxy already suspects, that the Dominion conquers first and negotiates later." Vadran's mandibles flexed in a sharp click. "And you still lack the courage to answer with force." "Courage," Elias said quietly, "isn't measured in noise." The projection crackled, static bending the alien's outline. For the first time, the High Imperator's gaze twitched, as though the transmission itself strained under some unseen interference. The order went out through channels that didn't exist on any public map. Satellites dormant since the last century hummed to life, their cores waking with a ripple of code stored beneath official archives. In the crust below the Atlantic, buried vaults stirred. 3 Dravari frigates shifted their patrols toward Earth's southern hemisphere. One moment they were arrowheads against the void. The next, their signals stuttered. Pilots barked orders in alien tongues, but their engines cycled down without command. Lights dimmed, systems refused to respond. Within 30 seconds, the frigates fell silent, adrift intact and utterly dead. Mira watched the readout from her station. That's the 3rd time now. No debris, no flare, just gone. Elias clasped his hands behind his back. Now they start asking the right questions. "You've kept this buried for decades," she said, not looking up. "Most of the council doesn't even know the extent. That's the point. The fewer who know, the harder it is to counter." Her eyes flicked to him, a trace of unease beneath her composure. "You think they'll retreat?" "I think they'll test us again," Elias replied. "Predators don't flee at the first wound. They pull back to measure the teeth." On the Dravari flagship craft Vorin, tension thickened. Commanders huddled around a shifting map of Earth's orbital lanes. Their voices a chorus of low, chitinous clicks. 2 vanished patrols could be dismissed as coincidence. 3 demanded answers. Drexel, the second in command, leaned close to his leader. "They are bleeding us, Imperator," without firing a weapon. Vadran's gaze narrowed. "Then we force the hand that cuts." He raised a clawed limb toward the tactical display. "Target their northern array. Minimal strike. Show them their sky is ours." At 1740 Universal Time Coordinated, another beam lands from orbit, this time toward the Tycho Relay Cluster. But before the shot reached its mark, the emitter flared blue-white and folded inward. The destroyer's crew never fired a second time. From the surface, only a streak of falling debris marked the attempt. The next transmission between Elias and the High Imperator carried a different weight. "You are tampering with our systems," Vadran growled, each word layered with restrained fury. Elias didn't blink. "Your systems are misbehaving because they are unwelcome here. You claim defense, yet we see no fleet. You see what we want you to see." For a moment, the alien said nothing. Behind him, faint distortions rippled across the projection. Ghost flickers that weren't there before. "You think this will save you? A few ghosts in the dark." Elias's tone was calm, measured. "You came to threaten a world. You found one that does not play by your rules." In the council chamber, murmurs turned to cautious hope. Reports flowed in, Dravari patrols hesitating, some retreating to higher orbit, others idling without orders. Minister Ose leaned toward the central display. "If we press now, we might drive them out entirely." Admiral Reeve frowned. "Or we provoke a full strike." Elias shook his head. "No, they're caught between fear and pride. Pressing now tips them to pride. Then when—" Ose asked, "When they no longer trust their own fleet." Night fell over the Atlantic as Elias walked the silent corridor outside the command ring. Through the viewport, Earth rotated slowly, its oceans glinting beneath scattered city lights. For a brief moment, the planet looked untouched, almost serene, as though the siege above were a distant rumor. Mira joined him. "You don't look triumphant." "It's not victory," he said. "It's the first crack." "Will they escalate?" "Yes." "And if they strike harder?" He turned, the faint light catching the line of an old scar at his jaw. "Then we show them the grave they've already dug." By dawn, the Dominion fleet had drawn into a tighter formation, its warships orbiting like a slow-turning blade. Civilian traffic remained halted. Propaganda continued to flow, now threaded with sharper undertones. Accusations of human treachery, warnings of hidden weapons. The galaxy, watching from afar, began to whisper. Perhaps Earth was not defenseless after all. The Dominion fleet lingered like a bruise against the upper atmosphere. Its formation tightened, weapons primed but not fired. For 3 days, Earth's defenses had answered every move with invisible precision. No missiles, no fleets. Just quiet erasure of their power. Systems failed, vessels drifted dead, and command chains splintered under a pressure they couldn't name. On the command deck of Athena's Veil, the lights were dimmed to preserve focus. Elias Kale stood before the primary screen, the silhouette of the High Imperator forming once more in holographic shimmer. This time, Vadran's posture had shifted, no longer arrogant, but tight, brittle. "Your world hides teeth," the alien said, each word clipped. "What are you?" Elias didn't move. "Survivors. Builders. You came expecting a field to plow. Instead, you found a minefield. You threatened the Dominion with tricks?" "No," Elias replied. "We offered peace. You chose to test our silence." Far above, the first real consequence unfolded. A Dravari dreadnought, their flagship Krefvorin, lurched as though struck by an unseen wave. Its engine cycled down, core flickered, and the lights across its hull dimmed to black. Crew scrambled through corridors, their claws scraping uselessly against unresponsive panels. In the Dominion's command net, confusion boiled into open alarm. "They're inside our architecture," one technician barked. "Shut down external relays," another hissed. But the dreadnought didn't explode. It didn't burn. It simply stopped, adrift unbroken, like a monument of futility. Mira watched the feed as it updated in real time. That's the keystone of their fleet. Elias's expression was unreadable. Then they understand the line. "You've made your point," she said. "They'll have to talk now." "They'll have to choose," he corrected. "Talk or leave." In the Dravari war room, Vadran's mandibles clicked an uneasy rhythm. Advisors circled him with conflicting counsel. Retreat before the unseen enemy stripped their fleet bare, or launch a full-scale planetary strike before their strength faded completely. Drexel, his second, leaned in close. "This planet is not worth the loss. Imperator, there are other systems. This one carries ghosts." Vadran stared at the cold glyphs representing his immobilized warships. "We do not retreat," he said, but his voice lacked the iron of the first day. The next transmission came not from Earth, but from their crippled dreadnought itself, a simple message transmitted across all Dominion frequencies. "Leave now. No further warnings." It wasn't signed. It wasn't traced. It bore no encryption they could break. Yet every crewman aboard heard it in their own tongue. In the council chamber, Minister Osei paced. "You sent that?" "Without authorization." Elias shook his head. "It wasn't us. That was the system responding." "The system?" Admiral Reeve frowned. "You mean the network you've been activating?" Elias met his gaze. "It predates us." Silence hung heavy. Mira spoke at last. "Then all this time..." He nodded. "We didn't build it. We inherited it." Night spread over the eastern seaboard as the first Dominion ships began to pull away. Not a formal retreat. Not yet. But a shift in posture, a widening of their orbit, a lessening of the noose. Mira exhaled slowly. "They're leaving." "For now," Elias said. "Predators remember wounds. But they also remember the ones who don't flinch." Hours later, the High Imperator's final projection flared once more. Gone was the pomp, the subtle mockery. His mandibles moved with deliberate control. "This is not surrender," he said. "This is withdrawal. The Dominion does not waste blood on stones." "Call it what you will," Elias replied. "Your ships will depart by dawn. If they linger, the silence will grow." "What is the silence?" Elias let the question hang. "The reason no one takes this planet. When the fleet finally turned, it left no proclamation, no last strike. Just debris fields where its boldest ships had drifted powerless, and a sky once again scattered with civilian traffic." Mira joined Elias at the viewport. Below, Earth turned, imperfect, unarmed by appearances yet untouched. "They'll tell stories about this," she said. "They should," Elias replied. "But they won't know the whole of it." "You think they'll come back?" "Yes," he said, "but not as conquerors." As dawn bled over the horizon, the hidden satellites went dark again, sinking back into the blind spots of history. Earth resumed its humble posture. Scrap metal in orbit, fractured governments arguing over tariffs and treaties, a species still seen as small by the wider galaxy. Yet those who had come to break it left with truth burned into their records. Earth was never defenseless. It was waiting.